Yeah, that's. Hey, what's happening, sports fans? No, that's not right. Let me. What's happening,
Sports
wrestling
entertainment.
fans? Sports entertainment fans. This is the Two Bros Unprepared Wrestling Show. Apparently tonight. What's happening, Kevin?
What are you talking about? I'm prepared. I am so prepared. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
you are so prepared. It's ridiculous. I am really bright. I feel like I'm very illuminated tonight.
We'll find out by the end of the episode just how bright you are. Because Doug, we're predicting winners and losers. I guess maybe we'll know next week just how bright either of us are.
Mm.
We're doing Royal Rumble preview tonight. We're going to run through the matches, including the Rumbles themselves. Talk about who we think may show up that hasn't been announced. Talk about who we think is going to win. Stay tuned for that in our main event segment. But Doug,
Do we have some news, Kevin? Is there news on this show?
we do some news on this show, and I want to start with some bad luck news. Not bad luck, Barrett. It's some bad luck news. The talented Cora Jade, she's only recently returned to NXT after more than half a year off of television, and this past week she tore her ACL at a house show, and looks like she is going to be out for at least 1 year. So really tough break for Cora, who's one of the more talented women on a very talented and stacked NXT women's roster. And before we move on from ACL injury news, Doug, we got another one on the female side of things.
Man, it is not a good time for the knees in wrestling right now.
It's a good time for orthopedic surgeons, but not.
Yeah, really.
It's always a good time for orthopedic surgeon. Let's be real. But Kylan King, who many of you know from her spot appearances on AEW, but she's also a member full-time of the TNA roster. She also has torn her ACL and also will be out for upwards of a year, because those are not easy injuries to come back from at all. It takes some time, and we wish the best to both Cora and Kylan to have some speedy recoveries and get back soon.
Absolutely. Man, so that's what Charlotte, Kyla, and Cora now, all with knee. I mean, Charlotte sounds to be the most severe with ACL, MCL, XYZ. Everything in the knee is all jacked up, and
it is interesting that all these injuries seem to be happening on the female rosters too.
Well, not all of them.
I know, obviously. Well, no, it's a coincidence, but the
right.
three we're just talking about there, yeah. And speaking of. Move from injury to how about some happier things, some people getting some jobs, because that's what we want, is work for all the men and women in wrestling. I know on our last broadcast we hinted that we were going to talk a lot more about free agent coming and goings, so let's talk some free agent news, Doug.
Let's do it.
The former Dolph Ziggler, going by his real name, obviously, of Nick Nemeth, made his first post-WWE appearance along with his brother, AEW talent Ryan Nemeth, at New Japan's recent Wrestle Kingdom. Keeping busy, he has also since appeared on the Indies. He has also appeared and appears to be signed with TNA, as he made an appearance on their Hard to Kill pay-per-view. He showed up following their main event, where Moose began his second world title reign after defeating Alex Shelley. So Nick Nemeth, the former Dolph Ziggler, is not wasting any time in his next endeavors.
You know, it's funny. Both he and Edge, I want to call them Ziggler and Edge right now. You know, when they come out and they're finally their real names after being these like lengthy WWE guys for basically 20 years, both of them, and then they're chanting their real names. I noticed both he and Edge had the same reaction of when they're chanting Adam for Edge and Nick for him. It's like, okay, that's going to take some getting used to now.
Not used to hearing your real name.
Yeah.
But I'd be obviously talking talented individuals, and Dolph, especially the last couple of years, really hasn't had a lot to do in WWE. And funny, if you see any of his comedy bits or hear him in interviews and things, almost jokingly talks about not being a fan of the business. I mean, who knows? He could be one of those CM Punk situations that maybe it's going to take time away from WWE to reignite that love and that passion for pro wrestling in him. But thus far, his work in New Japan and TNA looks like he might be committed again. So we'll see.
Yep, we shall see.
And speaking of TNA's Hard to Kill pay-per-view and free agents, the former Dana Brooke also made her appearance, going now by Ash by Elegance is her ring name. She was shown sitting at ringside for the Knockouts World Championship match where Trinity lost her title
Oh,
to Jordan
that's good.
Grace. Yep.
So I'm watching, going, who is this person that I
You
should know?
saw? She
I
doesn't
saw
look
that.
like. Yeah,
I'm
she
like, I
doesn't
don't
look like.
recognize. I mean, it was like a YouTube clip, but I'm like, who is this person? Well, why are they acting like I should know
Is
who this
Ash by
is? I
Elegance,
did
but
not
Dana
recognize her,
Brooke
man.
has done a great job of reinventing herself as far as look goes, because she does have a completely different character makeup about her. And hopefully it'll work for her.
Yeah, hope so.
Some more TNA free agent news. Now, this isn't an assigning, Doug, but backstage at the recent TNA tapings following the Hard to Kill pay-per-view, we had former WWE talents Mansoor and Massey, also known as Maximum Male Models, backstage. So who knows? Maybe they'll pick up work as well.
Let's hope so. There's some talent there. It's just some bad packaging.
Bad packaging. Actually, you're correct. They both have good looks and they're not bad in the ring. It's just an awful gimmick that really had no chance of getting over. But we'll see if TNA takes a chance on them. More free agent news. Again, I told you there's a ton. We have so many people coming off non-competes, and WWE in the fall had handed out so many pink slips that we have folks signing every which way, and that includes. Well, this one's a little bit of an interesting free agent talent because this is a AEW signing, but they have hired Black Taurus and have killed the character of Black Taurus. Explanation there. So Black Taurus, I know you've seen him on AEW. He's made appearances as they do with the, hey, so-and-so is all elite. Tony is not averse to having folks on his show that is actually not signed to the brand, which was the case for Black Taurus. He was still under contract with AAA, making appearances with AEW. He is now all elite. AAA had no problem with AEW showcasing their character, Black Taurus. They do have a problem with Black Taurus being on their intellectual property on someone else's show exclusive to that person's show.
Yeah.
So the man who plays Black Taurus has signed to AEW. How he will be repackaged and renamed is yet to be seen. Black Taurus has been appearing primarily on the Ring of Honor brand, which I think might be where he mostly ends up, but we'll see what they do as far as a rebranding going.
Is this where they call him Noir Taurus going forward?
The way that Tony's tend to do it is add like 4 or 5 words of the wrestler's native language at the end that American wrestling fans will have no hope whatsoever of recreating at all. I know, right?
What are we going to do with you, brother?
What are we going to do with him? Another free agent news, and this one is a where will she go? So what we have is a situation of perhaps a bidding war, maybe if we're lucky for Camille.
Is it the bidding war of 2024?
Hey, Camille is probably worth putting some bids out on for sure. She is a most known with her time in the National Wrestling Alliance. She held the NWA Women's Championship for a very impressive 812 days. That's a long title reign. But she was backstage this week at AEW's Dynamite. However, it's also been reported that she has received an offer to immediately join the NXT brand. So which way will she go? Will she see which contract ends up being the biggest? I hope for her. She has got such a great look, and especially when you consider some of the women, and I'm not trying to push her over to the WWE side because AEW obviously has a great women's roster going with Purrazzo and Toni Storm and Britt Baker and plenty, but man, a Jade Cargill type and Gonzalez and Nia Jax. Like there's so many big women in WWE that a big strong woman like Camille, powerhouse kind of matchups that I don't think she has as many of in AEW. But I think either way it goes, either brand will be very lucky to score Camille. If you've not seen Camille's work, I would definitely recommend looking up her body of work there. It's strong stuff.
You think Nick Aldis's new position within WWE there would help bring her to WWE over AEW?
I think that yes, has to be something that would be playing in her favor. I'm sure she was backstage. She could have just been visiting friends at Dynamite, especially since there's already an offer, but you never know. I mean, if Tony, when Tony gets in a bidding war, that he might offer so much more than an NXT contract that she'd have a hard time saying no. But she does have that connection already there. And it was in an interview last year with Camille where she talked openly about WWE being basically the promised land, the holy grail, the place she'd like to end up.
It is the end game for so many, unless you're Christopher Daniels. But
we will see where she goes. And see if that happens soon. So, Doug, last night, I'm sure you caught this too, and I'm curious about your take on it, on Collision, and, of course, also on Tony Khan's social media, because Tony loves the social medias. It was announced that AEW is returning and bringing back something from its origin, and that is the ranking system, something that they pushed very strongly at the beginning of AEW and then quietly just let slip away. But here in the month of January, they're going to be bringing back the ranking system. For me, I like it when they use it. If they don't use it and it's just there and then they only refer to it sporadically, it serves no point. But if you want to make your win-loss records play into a storyline where they seem to mean something, and you give rationale for wins and losses as far as everyone wants to be a champion and climb those rankings, if you do that, I'm fine with it. But it takes the kind of, honestly, long-term commitment that I'm not sure Tony Khan has.
See, here's my thing, man. First of all, thanks for watching the show last week, and Tony, and deciding, to counter me. But wins and losses don't matter in wrestling. It's storyline based. I thought it was cool when it first started. This I see as Tony just doubling down on all of his X tweets from last week and, see, there we go. Thumbs up. That's what I see this as. It's just Tony doubling down on his rant on social media and trying to push that narrative. It was cool. They lost their way with it. So you
don't think he's really committed to it? You think it's just
he'll be committed to it for, I don't think the long-term commitment's going to be there. I think he's going to get bored and see something bright and shiny. I hate talking about Tony like I used to talk about Vince, but that's where we are right now. He's going to get bored with it.
You don't have Vince McMahon to kick around anymore, Doug.
I know. So I got to go after Papa Khan, I guess.
I'm with you. I mean, I do like it. I liked it from the get-go. I thought it was a good way to separate yourselves, make it feel more sports and less sports entertainment. And then when you just played so fast and loose with the rules, the rankings, they didn't mean anything. You were selective about when you talked about wins and losses. It lost something, so it was fine that it went away. If you bring it back, stay committed to it. But I just don't think you will.
And in hindsight, I've thought about this too. In wrestling, you can really book yourself into a corner really, really quick, where you're at that Vince McMahon level, when you're doubling down on your Roman Reigns type character when nobody is behind him, but you've got this logical progression of, this is the kid with the most wins or whatever. So he should have this world championship shot where, this young upstart that everybody loves and is selling all the merch and everything really has no logical reason to be in anything. Then you got to make that a story. You can just get into a corner real easy like that. I think
you can. You absolutely can.
I really hadn't thought of before, but again, hindsight, and I just have to have a counterpoint since I ranted about this last week and said it didn't matter. Now Tony goes and brings it back. So
he's doing this all to spite you because of your heel turn on him.
That's okay. I will die on this hill. It doesn't matter. We don't need it. It's storyline driven.
Speaking of storyline driven, Sting. How will his story and career end? Apparently, any way he wants. The Hall of Famer is scheduled, of course, to wrestle his last match here in give it a month and a couple of weeks time. March 3rd at the pay-per-view. He's likely, it looks like, even though it's not official, I don't believe yet, but it's pretty obvious they're going with a tag, him and Darby Allin against the Young Bucks. It's usually customary, Doug, that a legend goes out on his back, right? That you just pass that torch along to the next generation. And maybe that's what Sting will decide to do, but it will be Sting's decision. It has been reported that Tony Khan is giving the Stinger full creative control for his final match. And it's a tag match, probably a tag match. It's not going to mean anything to the grand scheme of things. None of the men involved need the torch passed. I'm actually completely fine if Sting decides he wants to win his final contest, then Tony's fine for that. I'm fine for that. I don't see that as an issue at all. This isn't a situation of a WrestleMania match where, you know, a Ric Flair pushing old age loses to HBK in a way that doesn't make as much sense. There's many ways that this could go where Sting could come out on top and it not be out of the realm of possibility. And I'm cool with that. I don't know what you think.
I've read a lot where Sting doesn't want to do a lot of like singles matches anyway. And I was trying to think back about Sting's singles matches, how many there really been, you know, since he's been in AEW.
Very few.
Yeah. So it makes sense. Of course, you know, he's built Darby up to hand Darby over. So that's already established. The Bucks don't need anything, clearly, unless this serves a storyline. Which I think the feel good thing is to have Sting go out on top, you know, instead of passing the torch, because there's nothing that needs to be done with that. The Bucks long term don't lose anything. You know, they've got the new heel personas anyway. So I'm kind of curious to see where that goes in the future, because I figure that'll be sticking around for a while since they're kind of jabbing Punk now. I'm cool with yeah, there we go.
He's cool with it.
Cool with it. There we go.
2 thumbs up from Doug.
2 thumbs up.
Sting going out on top if he wants.
Yeah.
Last bit of news here, Doug. Finally, on our last show, we talked about Dark Side of the Ring returning for a 5th season here in March. We reported at the time that the only known subject matter was Gentleman Chris Adams. Thanks to the Wrestling Observer this week, we know a bit more about Season 5. The topics we can add to that list, and not just Chris Adams, but that now includes Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the great Harley Race, Buff Bagwell, which could be an interesting one, Kurt Angle, which could also be an interesting one and probably has the biggest ratings potential, Sandman, and there's a lot there in those old Wild West days of ECW. Right? And then Black Saturday, which that's when Vince McMahon purchased Georgia Championship Wrestling to get back on TBS and get that time slot all the way back in 1984. And what was a precursor to what Vince would do successfully later on. This didn't work out so well for him. So I'm actually, as an old school fan, interested in that one as well. So some good stuff coming up on Dark Side. Looking forward to it, as always.
As always, Dark Side is always good. Always interesting, always entertaining.
We will give you more information on the exact premiere date once we know it. And Doug, with that, we'll close the opening bell segment and let's go into our main event. We are all Rumble all the time. This is our second straight Rumble topic. If you didn't see the previous show, please go check it out in the archives. We talk the history of the Royal Rumble, the concept of where it came from, some of the best Rumbles of all time, some of the worst Rumbles of all time, best winners and losers. We covered all of that in our last episode. But this episode, Doug, we are going to talk specifically about Royal Rumble 2024. We're going to predict some winners and losers. Obviously, Rumble is very likely to be opening with the Women's Rumble, closing with the Men's Rumble. But if you're okay with it, Doug, I would like to instead, let's talk about the non-Rumble matches.
Yes, first. Let's do that. I was going to say we should go with non-Rumble. Let's do it.
It's definitely easier to predict the one-on-one or tag team matchups or even the four-way than it is to talk Royal Rumble. But to that end, we got a United States Championship match. That'll be one of the filler matches, quite honestly. But it is the champion Logan Paul versus KO Kevin Owens. Doug, do you think the Pauls held the United States Championship long enough Or do you think going into Mania season it makes sense to have Kevin Owens with a title around his waist?
I think somebody needs to chase after that US that title going into WrestleMania season, and I think it's going to be a sweeter victory for a babyface to take that off of Logan Paul at WrestleMania. Uh, and I'm just kind of curious to how this is going to work because we've seen what Paul can do. Now I'm thinking that Paul is very much a Rey Mysterio, Ricochet type of wrestler. I'm certain he can pull it off with KO, so it'll be really interesting with he and the prize fighter. But I think Paul's going to keep that belt and take it into WrestleMania, and maybe it's Owens that chases after it into WrestleMania. Um, I don't know, but I think I think my man Logan Paul is going to keep that belt.
You know, my initial reaction is to agree with you, but and I don't want to give away what I'm thinking for the next contest we're going to talk about. But I do believe, unless they add some matches, which they might add one,
Right.
maybe something for a pre-show, but there's just not a lot of space on a Royal Rumble card. So I do think that the Logan Paul KO match is the only chance to have any titles change on at least what we know right now is the lineup for Royal Rumble. And I'm going to say that KO walks away with it. I guess the X factor in all of this is while he is signed, it's obvious that Logan Paul is not there week by week. I don't know how many dates he has.
Right.
And if he was a regular wrestler on every single week, I'd say that it's not time to move that title yet. I can't imagine he isn't appearing at WrestleMania in some form. But if they only have so many dates they can use him between now and Mania, they may move that title to a really popular talent like Kevin Owens to develop some new storylines and then work Logan Paul back in closer to Mania. So just so we have a point of disagreement, I'm going to go the opposite direction and say that KO is going to win.
Cool. Okay.
Because I know we're probably going to agree on this next one, Doug, and that is the Fatal 4-Way for the Universal Championship, which is going to be strange to see Roman Reigns make one of his rare appearances on any television, but a defense on premium live events, and this is not going to be your main event. It's going to be a little strange, but that's the way the Rumble works. We got Roman Reigns, though, defending in a 4-way contest, which was set up really poorly, in my opinion. Just the obvious, heel ruins match for number one contendership. So now you're going to get punished by facing them all. And then you have to act shocked. I can't believe that you're doing this. He's defending against Randy Orton, AJ Styles, LA Knight. I think this will be entertaining. Very entertaining.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to get to see an awesome RKO from out of nowhere on somebody. LA Knight is going to shine like the star that he is. AJ's going to AJ, and then the tribal chief's going to walk away with his belt. I mean,
this is not the hill that Roman Reigns is going to die on. Not before WrestleMania. No, not in a 4-way.
Nope, not happening. Not happening. We'll see some shenanigans, obviously, but Reigns does not lose this belt.
No, he does not. I do like the matchup because I do think it'll be, an entertaining 20 minutes of the pay-per-view, 15 to 20 minutes of the pay-per-view. I like that it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
Not just because it's a 4-way, because I'm typically not, I would prefer a one-on-one contest. But if you just look at the possibilities coming out of this with having 3 potential contenders to the throne, you got Randy Orton, who's been away for a very long time, so that's fresh. You got AJ Styles, who, while not as far gone as Randy has been, AJ is kind of freshly back on the WWE scene. And then LA Knight is one of your more recent minted main eventers who hasn't had a one-on-one really a long program yet. I know he had the one match, but so all of these are relatively newish, haven't seen it in a while, at least, if ever. Opponents for Roman Reigns, and some of the problem that Roman was starting to encounter was he'd gone through everybody at least once, but this gives him a sort of I think a reboot of the whole head of the table storyline moving through Mania season. So I like it, but agree with you, he's not losing.
No, Again, got to have somebody chasing that into WrestleMania season, whether it's Rock or Cody or whoever. Somebody's got to be chasing that.
Well, there you go. We got to talk then about the matches that everyone really tunes into the Royal Rumble for. What we've been talking about for our last two episodes, and that's the Royal Rumble itself. For each Rumble match, Doug, I'd love to start with what who we know is officially entered, and
That's
then
what I
we'll
was
talk
going
about
up here. Yeah, who we know is
we'll talk about
officially.
any surprises, like because there's more, as we mentioned
Yeah.
in our last show. There's way more to the Rumble than just who wins. It's who comes
Mm-hmm.
across strong, what storylines come out of it, who's the surprises. So I'd love to talk a little bit before since this is a preview show and there's so few matches on a card of Royal Rumble size. I'd love to talk about who we think's going to show up, whether that's from return from injury, a legend coming back, or if it's a defection, which Doug hinted that he might have some defections from AEW that
Yeah.
he is wanting to talk about. And then, of course, we'll obviously talk about who we think is legitimately in the mix there at the end, as well as storylines coming out of this. And, of course, our winner, which I know we'll all predict completely right here.
Of course we will.
Women's Rumble, Doug, we don't have a lot as of the recording of this broadcast on the 21st
That's what
of
I'm looking at here.
January.
Yeah. Not a
Not
lot,
a
man.
lot. 30 women will enter right now. We just know a handful. That includes Bailey, Nia Jax, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, and Maxine Dupree.
Yep.
So Maxine's going to win this thing.
Absolutely.
We got some elephants, I think, big elephants in both the men and women's Royal Rumble match. I know we all love to be surprised. I know that it's not always possible to be surprised. Let's talk about the elephants. On the women's side, Doug, everyone's waiting. Sasha Banks, does she return? Is that the defection that you're thinking? I guess it's not really defection since she's technically not under contract now, but does she make her return to Triple H now that Vince is gone or sidelined?
see, that's what I'm wondering if she shows up. That's not who I was talking about. There's a men's talent that I see is just a dead lock for an appearance at the Rumble. But on the Sasha Banks side, on the women's side, my goodness, that would be great. I would love to see her in AEW now too. I would love to see the Boss and the Virtuosa go at it. I would love to see that. Yeah. But if she does show up, we all know I don't bet on the Boss. I do not bet against the Boss. I do not do it. So I'm calling it right now. If she shows up, she wins.
I do think that she is likely to show. I am very spoiler averse, especially when it comes to the Rumble. So many of you watching this may have read more reports than I have on rumored appearances. I have intentionally tried to block all that noise out to the best of my ability because I do love the surprise element of Royal Rumble so much. Yeah. I don't want to spoil it for myself by having insider information, but I mean, I would be questioning, is it time? And we do know from reports that have gone on for months, not necessarily just around a Royal Rumble return, but just in general, that there has been interest from both AEW and there's been interest from WWE. There's rumors that those talks broke down with WWE. That could be a red herring to throw people off the scent that she's going to make a surprise return. I'm guessing that it's a new day underneath Triple H and that Sasha is more likely to go back to WWE. I think even more likely than that, Doug, is that Trinity Fatu, who just said her goodbyes to the crowd over in TNA, rebuilt herself over there after she and Sasha both walked out of WWE. I think it's more of a given than Sasha, who I'm still not 100% certain of. I think it's way more likely that Trinity does come back.
I agree too. It looks like we got some comments here, and TY, I agree with you 100% because that's who I was going to bring up next. I'm not sure about Mercedes though. I would love to see the Boss back in WWE. Actually, I think I'd love to see her back in WWE before I'd love to see her back in, or not back, but actually in AEW. The more I think about it, but yeah, 100%. With AJ Lee, I definitely think so. Since AJ Lee will be a surprise entrant. Is she winning? Absolutely not. But is she going to show up? Yeah, maybe she gets a WrestleMania moment out of it too. It starts a storyline, just like we know that Michelle McCool was going to show up and have her spot. It's kind of like the Kofi thing at this point when Michelle McCool shows up. Maybe even Layla too. A little Lay Cool reunion. These things
So
happen at WrestleMania.
if you remember those first couple of women's Royal Rumbles, they were completely full of legends, and part of that
Yep.
wasn't just the nod that they were paying to the women who paved the road. It was necessity. The women's roster was not nearly big enough
Right.
to not pad it out with some making some phone calls because you didn't have 30 women on the
Yeah.
active roster.
Yeah.
That's not a problem anymore. So I do think that the number of legends returning will be more for the, hey, we haven't seen this person, isn't it great? I do think that AJ Lee is a definite possibility
Uh-huh.
for just kind of a one-off or
Oh
a
yeah.
couple months. It wouldn't surprise me to see a Trish Stratus return, especially after her strong
Right.
run last year.
Yeah.
But
I
I
think
think we'll
Trish
see
is
some
good.
NXT women.
I'm not real familiar with the NXT women. Which ones do you think we're going to see? Not the hurt ones, right?
Well, Cora Jade would have been an excellent one,
Yeah.
honestly. I do believe that the NXT women's division may be the most stacked women's division in all of professional wrestling. There's that many women down in Orlando tearing it up in the ring. I think Tiffany Tiffany Stratton. I think that Fallon Henry. I think Kiana James. There are a lot of talented female performers down in NXT. Nikita Lyons, she's been hurt. She just came back. Nikita is awesome. There's so many great women in
So
NXT that I think that they'll be more likely to lean on. Hey, Roxanne Perez, who did show up in the Royal Rumble last year. And I could go on. There's that many. I think Roxanne comes back for sure. I think if you want to give the mainstream WWE fan a bit of exposure into Nikita, you could have her at the Rumble, and it doesn't mean it's a call up. It's just a preview of here's somebody you're going to be seeing in our rings for a long time to come. But I think we
if
are going to see way more NXT women than Legend returns.
speaking of NXT women, if you're Triple H and Shawn Michaels, is this where you pull the trigger on Jade Cargill? Let
100%.
her out, let her out there, and just let her do the Lesnar thing, run through a whole bunch of talent, and establish herself as a beast, and then start a storyline with somebody who actually ends up eliminating her? Or do you let her
Totally.
run the whole thing? Just let her destroy, come in, do the Lesnar thing, let her destroy, 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 take the belt, point at the sign, and go after somebody.
Totally. I mean, I absolutely think it is no way I
Mm-hmm.
can, barring an injury we don't know about,
Yeah.
there's no way that Jade does not make her debut in Royal Rumble. And
Mm-hmm.
I would give her a strong run all the way up to the end,
Yeah.
at the very least. Doug, is there any other returns or debuts that you're predicting for the women's match before we talk a little bit about some storylines?
No, I was really thinking, I think that AJ is a lock. I think that's definitely happening. I had not really considered the boss, but I think there's a strong chance she shows up too.
I think that a Jade Cargill entrance is going to also be a storyline. It'll
Oh yeah.
be her running roughshod through a bunch of women to set up something
Hmm.
for Mania. I think it's not just we're going to throw her out there and see how she does. I think we're going to introduce her, and this is the beginning of her road to Mania path. I do think that storyline wise, we're going to see the further disillusion of Bailey's role in damage control. It's just so obvious that she is slowly going to be going back to the face side as the rest of her damage control mates continue to marginalize her, turn their back on her. I don't know if they're going to just out and out like you gang up on her, which obviously is possible in a Royal Rumble format.
Yes,
But
very much
at
so,
the
isn't it?
at the very least, there's going to be an opportunity to either save Bailey or to further yourself by turning on Bailey, and damage control is going to further cohese together,
Yes.
minus minus
Yes.
Bailey.
I agree 100% with that because
Which it's cool too. I like
yeah,
the slow burn they're doing there.
absolutely. Slow burns are always better. Love the slow burns.
as far as who's in at the end, Doug, I'm thinking for me, it's Becky Lynch because she's just so
Mm-hmm.
solid there. And I think I don't like her, but I think just because it's a rumble, it's a big person spot, you're going to have Nia Jax in there. And I think just the tease, like which way is it going to go? You're going to have Cargill and Sasha. If they both make appearances, they'll be in there at the end too. That's who I'm predicting is my final four.
That's a good final four. Although I'm saying Jax gets eliminated by Cargill. If Jade is in this, she will eliminate Jax before that final 4 or 5 are in that ring together, just to kind of develop that storyline. I think because I think that's a really good storyline for Jade to put Jade over as this beast because they establish Nia like, oh look, she's a monster or whatever. And maybe it's just a little bit of armchair fantasy booking on my part too. But I would really love to see, the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, that Jay just run that ring and just destroy everybody, even a returning Sasha Banks, even though I won't bet against the boss. I would love to see that just for the storyline involved, just to establish her. For those who aren't familiar with her, who don't know who or what's going on there, it hits so much harder, has so much more of an impact, and then have her go after, one of the women's champions. I think that would be great storyline wise.
I mean, down the road, there's money in that match for sure. Um,
Yeah.
Money in that match for sure, but that, of course,
Mhm.
would require one of those women at Mania, at least this year, being your champion.
Right.
I think you talk about fantasy booking. I think that as much as it makes sense to have Cargill in there at the end, I don't think that her first major storyline in WWE is going to be a push to the title. I see her being there at the end, and maybe she and Jax eliminate one another, and that's her mountain to climb at Mania. Is definitely not the matchup of Sasha versus Jade that
No,
we would
it's
like
not.
to see. But I do think that showing her conquer the woman I believe that they've been building up to be her ultimate opponent, I think that's a storyline that comes out of this. I think neither of those women win. I think if Sasha shows up, the boss is going to WrestleMania as a title contender.
Yeah.
Doug, on the men's side,
Oh my,
I,
we have just a few more men on the men's side, not much more.
we have a few more announced, which means, obviously room for more surprises.
Sure.
You got Cody Rhodes, Doug's favorite, CM Punk,
My,
everyone's favorite,
my other favorite, my two favorite wrestlers. They form a tag team.
Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Gunther, Chad Gable, Otis, and Akira Tozawa. So let's talk about how Tozawa is winning this
How does he
men's
win this?
Royal.
By flipping
Poor
Otis
Tozawa.
over at the last minute, or it's down to him and Otis, right? And he tosses, just press
Otis.
slams Otis right over the top rope, right? That's how it ends.
There's so much the men's rumble. I do believe, I know there's been a couple years where they've let the women go last, but I think that this is a situation where it makes a lot of sense for the men's match to go last, because let's talk elephant in the room again. After the very cryptic words of The Rock, everyone's expecting The Rock. So let's go ahead and say it. The biggest quote unquote surprise entrant of the night is the one that everyone will boo and be disappointed if he doesn't enter. So please, if you don't have The Rock in the Royal Rumble, Triple H, do learn the lesson that Vince McMahon did not learn when he didn't put Daniel Bryan in when people wanted Daniel Bryan. Don't put Rey Mysterio or some face in number 30 just to get booed. If The Rock isn't in this thing, fans will not be happy.
So true. If we get to 30 and we don't hear "If You Smell," it's all
Yeah.
over for the night. It's all over for the night. And by this point, it will be all but over for the night, because I think the men are going on last, just like you. We hit 30, and that's our last chance to get our last big surprise, and it probably will be The Rock. I'm feeling that. I'm feeling
Yeah.
that vibe.
Do
Even
you
though,
think that the booking, the order will predict this for us? If they open up with the men's match, does that mean all bets are off? Don't expect The Rock to show up?
I think so, because if they open with the men's match, they have something. The match that goes on last is going to be something huge, because it kicks the doors open to WrestleMania. I mean, it just kicks them wide open. So if there's not something really huge in the men's match, and it goes on first, I'm questioning what is happening in the women's match. Do they let Jade run wild? Do they bring Sasha back? Is that the big thing, for the women's match then?
If you have the men's match go on first, I'll say this. I'll call this. If the men's match goes on first, that means no Rock and Sasha for sure, and she's the big surprise at the end. But if the women's match goes on first, The Rock is definitely the big surprise entrant.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't, Rock doesn't have to win the Royal Rumble to go after.
So we
Oh,
got a prediction here that the Rumble doesn't headline, and that
interesting. Hmm. Yeah, Tyler's commenting.
I mean,
So,
it would be again. I think that the booking of this night, as far as the order of the matches, is going to say a lot in advance for what we can expect. Right.
right.
So if the men's match opens the show, no Rock. If the men's match doesn't even main event, then they have to have something cooked up for that four-way, more interesting than the four-way itself. That's going to be an entertaining match, but none of the three contenders are going to walk away with the title, so it has to be somebody that comes out at the end. Be a CM Punk situation where the big surprise is Punk at the end of the show, even though Punk was not involved in the show. I still don't see anything but a Rumble match ending this, and I do think that The Rock will be there. He set the expectation that he's going to be there without saying it.
Yeah, it's just say you're going to headline WrestleMania without saying you're going to headline WrestleMania. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
okay. I don't want to tip my hat here because I want to save our predictions for winter to last. I will say this: The Rock is going to enter the Royal Rumble. I don't think that means he's going to win.
Interesting. And I will say this: I don't think Rock has to win the Royal Rumble to go head to head with the head of the table at WrestleMania. It's not a prerequisite. Don't have to do it because, well, he's The Rock. It's family. There's a Samoan bloodline, literally a bloodline angle for the bloodline right there to see who the real head of the table is. It writes itself. Does not have to be there. Rock could come out and take care of business and try and even the odds in this fatal four-way when we get shenanigans, but that seems too almost low level. Like he's going after a couple of thugs when he's going after like lower mid-card bloodline members at that point. I don't know. I think he's 30. He doesn't have to win.
And how about other surprises? Because I think we're both in agreement about Rock. Before we talk about who we think is going to win, I don't know. I think we have other surprises coming or returns. I mean, they're not all going to be huge surprises. Sammy's been on the shelf. Sami Zayn, I think timing wise, it's probably close to him returning.
Right.
Obviously, Sammy's super over with the crowds always. I think that's a feel good moment, saving his return. I think it's a given for him. Doug, you are thinking in terms of defections, and absolutely. I'm eager to hear about who you think are going to be some of the surprise entrants to the Royal Rumble, because we only got like 11, so we got like 19 of Tony Khan's men that can jump ship here.
I don't think all 19 of them are out of their no compete phases though, so I can only think of one that is, and that's Andrade, because Andrade just walked right out of AEW, no contract. His contract ended. There's no non-compete. He's done. It ended. He's free agent. He can go where he wants and do what he wants. I see Andrade, Andrade returning to WWE. Maybe bringing a little bit more heat to the LWO. We get him back with Selena Vega. Man, this is great stuff right here. I just wish Charlotte were able to be there to travel with her husband on this road to WrestleMania. But I think Andrade definitely shows up. in the Royal Rumble.
I agree. It's been rumored for a while now that Andrade would be making his not only his return but his debut. Like it's almost overdue for folks waiting for him to show up on TV. WWE has the luxury of being able to play it a little calmer than maybe Tony Khan's booking style of hot shotting everything. So whether it's a Jade Cargill making her first appearance or when are you going to pull the trigger on Andrade, they have the luxury of keeping things in their back pocket.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in this instance to save an Andrade return for a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doug, anybody else? Any defections or returns or surprises? You think we'll get any legends? Are there any NXT? I think we'll see an NXT guy or two. I think we'll see more NXT women. I honestly think there's more women at NXT ready to make that jump. As far as men goes, I know you're not as familiar with the roster, but you've been seeing what a Carmelo Hayes can do.
And every time I've seen Braun Breaker, I just wish they'd call him a Steiner. But every time I see Braun Breaker, I'm like, what? Why is this kid not on the main roster yet? So
yeah.
I'd love to see him do the Lesnar thing and come in and just run shot over, some folks too. I'd love to see that. Get these people established on the main roster a little bit more.
Carmel is a definite, since he's been on SmackDown the last few weeks. In my mind, he's a definite to come in and have a strong showing. I think that'll be a storyline, is just how well he does. I predicted Braun last year, and they didn't do it. And I'm going to talk Braun more at the end of our show. Again, tipping my hand a bit. So I just don't know what it is, but I just, as much as I'd like to see it, and as much as it makes sense, I don't think he shows. So I think we get way fewer NXT men than we will NXT women. Obviously, the big surprise is going to be The Rock, and sure, let's make him number 30 and make fans wait on it. Let the smell what The Rock is cooking hit and the crowd go nuts. And then that means, right, The Rock is going to be there at the end.
Yep, The Rock will be there at the end for sure. And
who else?
I'm wondering if we get Big Match John to show up. Do we get Big Match John to show up at here to start some WrestleMania program with somebody? Do we get that? I mean, it is WrestleMania season.
I'm not sure now that the actor strike is behind. Most of the time that Cena was on the roster this past year was when he couldn't be doing his Hollywood work. I say he shows up for Royal Rumble. Big Match John is going to make an appearance. Does he have a Mania match? I'm not sure. I don't know if Peacemaker is actually back in production yet or not, but wouldn't surprise me to see him. I think at the end, if Cena is in it, sure, he's likely to be around at the end, but I think there towards the end, you're going to see Cody.
Punk.
Yeah, you're going to see Cody. You're going to see Punk. You're going to see The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say you see Gunther. I'm going to throw Gunther in the mix. Gunther had an impressive story last year without a win. He came in as one of the first two participants and was there right to the end. And that really elevated him into, what we've seen this last year as just the butt kicking monster that no one can dethrone. I say he has another. I don't think they do it quite as strong 2 years in a row, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is thrown into the mix to make folks think of him as a main eventer that he'll be sharing the ring with at that time.
I like
do you think it's too obvious if The Rock wins, or do you think that it's a foregone conclusion if The Rock shows up, he's got to win in order to challenge Roman Reigns?
Storyline wise, he doesn't have to win to get that WrestleMania match because it writes itself. However, if you're going to put Cody in that position to win, Cody's going after Roman Reigns. That's how Cody should finish his story. It's just the way it should fit, the big Hollywood ending. That's the way that story should be finished, even though I don't like that ending. But and with Rollins in his knee situation right now, does it make sense for Punk to win and go after Rollins? Does Punk go, what's going, or do they just kind of keep Rollins like in the background, like with some pre-tapes while he heals and is hopefully good to go by WrestleMania? Or do they take that off of him because they're not sure if he can make it, within like this, 6-8 weeks it is to WrestleMania? There's a lot of ifs of like real life what ifs there if we're looking at a Punk win.
We talked about it in our last show that one of the things they've done to really improve the Royal Rumble over the last decade is once we had a brand split, there's so many different directions you can go as to which title you're going after, which storyline is the
Yeah,
Rumble going to affect. It for a while became predictable. And honestly, I like that we're having this conversation. If it was just very obvious The Rock
right.
is wanting to be head of the table, therefore The Rock must win Royal Rumble, like
Hmm.
20 years ago, that's what would happen. If you're
Yeah,
wanting Rock versus Reigns for the title, Rock would obviously have to win, take all the surprise out of it. Now it might be fun seeing how we get there, but we know where we're going. I don't think he will win. I'm going to say that Cody Rhodes, sorry, Doug, is going to win this, but we have time between now and WrestleMania for Cody Rhodes to put that on the line, his title match on, in a elimination chamber or something along those lines, where The Rock takes over ownership of that storytelling, or even heck, the good, white meat baby face that Cody Rhodes is, might even be convinced by a Rock to forego his title opportunity. There's you said it. There's many ways for The Rock to get
hmm
here, and I don't think that having the obvious one is going to be the way they go. If he wins, will the fans go home happy and it still be a good Rumble? I think yes. I think we'll all be fine with that outcome. I think for the element of surprise, they go a different route. I'm going to go Cody.
So I'm not going to go Cody because Cody. So,
I really don't think Cody's going to win. I'm just wanting to irritate you.
but I'm just here fantasy booking and think about this while you're talking. Here is a beautiful way to set up so many different things. Rock comes out as 30. You've got Rock, you've got Punk, you've got let's see, let's stick Cody in there. Rock, Punk, Cody. Let's stick Gunther in there. Why not?
Gunther, yeah,
Anyway, what we get down to? We get three guys left, right? Rock, Punk, Cody. Rock, Punk, Cody. Cody bounces Rock out, right? Totally unexpected. Babyface knocks Babyface out, right? Shock moment. Punk then, boom, dumps Cody. Punk wins, two baby faces out. So much tension there in so many different ways. Then they have things to play with on the angle, with the whole angle with you've got Punk. Is Rollins able to wrestle WrestleMania? If he is, great. Punk goes after Rollins. If he's not, Punk gets that title before WrestleMania. Cody goes after Punk. Cody goes after Punk. There's an issue there. Finish the story that way. Then Rock can go after Roman because head of the table.
there's so many ways we can go. There's so many ways they can go. I like that we don't know. I so
Yes,
like
this is
that we
good.
don't
This is
know.
fun. I'm
And
just
there are
loving this.
some real legitimate like returns, surprises, fresher faces, like with your CM Punk making the return that he has. You can plant so many WrestleMania seeds here. What will we be talking about next week when this all happens? Before I close it out, Doug, now that we've predicted some winners and some surprises, let me ask you this. Do you think that the surprise of The Rock, even if it's not a total surprise at this point, but do you think that derailed and superseded what the plans would have been otherwise? Do you see that this would have been the Cody Rhodes season that we didn't get last year, where they waited a year to give him that moment, and now because they have an opportunity to finally get Rock Reigns, that Cody may get himself put on the back burner yet again? Do you think this is an audible change of plans from what maybe was originally intended?
I think so. I don't think they would have invested the time and money in Cody, especially with the program with Lesnar, because if you're the guy that defeats Lesnar, you're the guy that can defeat Roman, right?
Yeah.
So there's that there, and they build Cody up through that. Cody has to prove, basically build his story, build his character. He has to level up in WWE. He may have been like a level 20 max level in AEW, but he's starting low level and working his way back up in the WWE world. Even he may get like some advanced character creation, get to start at a higher level. He's still got to level up, right? Sorry, I'm talking way too much RPG stuff right now, but it's where my brain lives. Just look at the stuff behind me here. So, but I'm thinking he had to build himself up. You had to build that part of his story and have him go through this adversity, these trials and tribulations. So that victory is that much sweeter. And really, it doesn't hurt him as a baby face to acquiesce to The Rock here in this situation,
It doesn't.
whether it's publicly or behind closed doors when he's saying, "Hey, kid, this is what we're going to do. This is where the money is. You finish your story later this year, or whenever it is." And that's where the money is. And Cody, being the son of a promoter, should know where the money is and understand that.
I think that's why he was fine with it not having the perfect ending that folks thought he would get last year. If he has to wait one more year, he understands it. This Rock Reigns match has been rumored for years, pretty much since Roman's, even before his dominant reign began, it was talked about. But most certainly over the last 4 years as champion, each year we've waited, and each year it seemed less and less a possibility. This year they teased it so hard that anything less than getting that would be considered a disappointment. Cody doesn't want to put himself in a position of getting booed at the end of his story either, which might be what happens if they go the route. It will be interesting if my prediction comes true, though, if fans would actually boo The Rock not winning. So that might be something they try to avoid now that I think about it. But regardless, it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And we cannot wait to talk about it next week. It's one of our favorites. We talked about how much we hate Battle Royals, but we love the Royal Rumble.
Such a contradiction, but absolutely true. Absolutely
100% true. Doug, let's hit that big finish.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
That way we can get into Rumble Week. You want to talk? Let's do botch.
Kevin, let me go first because my performer, my botch, and my match.
He's got a theme.
It's all the same thing, okay? It's all the same thing. I don't know if you can see this, but
I can't read it. Okay, help the folks at home. Help me.
So that is Hook and Joe, right? Because first of all, you want to put a kid over. This is how you do it. This is how you make your opponent look so strong in loss. So for match, I'm calling it for Hook and Joe, right? Because this is textbook how you get somebody over without doing the passing the torch, right? This is how you do it. This is how you build this kid. What was he, like 28-1 or whatever going into this, where wins again? I've said it, they don't matter, but if Tony's going to throw these numbers out there, I'm going to regurgitate them for this point. It's almost like a Goldberg kind of thing. Then you put him up against Joe, the dominant veteran. He is able to sustain, he's not winning. We know this. We know Hook wasn't walking out of there champion last Wednesday night, but he looked so strong in doing it. So Joe for the performer for putting Hook over like that, them for the match for, just the way it was done. That's the way it should be done. And the botch for what that nonsense Tony does at the end, where he sends out Hangman and Swerve. Why? What are you doing? You just ruined everything that you just did. All the greatness I just talked about, all the goodwill, everything that you did, you completely snatched it away from Hook at the end by sending out Hangman and then having Swerve just stand in the audience. I don't understand that. That was unnecessary. Those guys are established. Those guys, we know that they're not going to be, that this is the end for Hook and Joe for now. They didn't need to be out there to remind us that there's still some blood feud going on between the two of them, and eventually one of them is going to go after Joe. We didn't need that. Didn't need that.
I thought you were going to go for the botch, Samoa Joe deciding that basketball, and he was just going to. You talk about whiplash. Oh, that was painful to watch, man.
I had to rewind to see just how Hook hit. Impact. I was like, did he hit? Oh, yep. Okay. And it's funny because very early on in the match, I could almost see Joe going, slow down, kid. Because it looks like Joe gives him a little bit of a receipt to slow him down a bit.
That was slow. That slowed me down, and I was just watching it on the couch, right? But all right. You got a theme going. The mine are not connected. So I'll start with botch of the week. I hinted at it earlier. NXT.
Oh,
NXT, I love NXT, but Sean, what you're doing has been great. But why on earth? Braun Breaker, at least this week, I hope it was a one off. Braun Breaker was the comedic sidekick in a tag duo with Baron Corbin. So I know they've been teaming them together. They've been aligning them last few weeks, which was also like seemed like why does Braun should be beyond this at this point. But then in the duo, they make him the dim-witted comic foil, at least in this one backstage segment, which he's got to be, he's the guy that kicks butt in the Royal Rumble, comes in, eliminates a bunch of guys, not the guy that Baron Corbin's making fun of on camera, and Braun's just sitting there taking it. Didn't care for that. Bad booking in my mind. Let's not. I don't know what they're doing with Braun Breaker. I'm not sure they know what they're doing with Braun Breaker, but this is not it.
Oh, that's not good.
Performance of the week, I'm going with Mark Briscoe and the Briscoe family. You talk about real life, and sometimes the most powerful things in professional wrestling and this whole big make-believe world that we watch for entertainment are the things that are not necessarily entertaining and are not necessarily scripted. But to come out and one, I don't know how he came out the week after his brother passed away, but he's coming out on the anniversary of the death of Jay Briscoe, brings out Jay's daughters, talks about the miracle that is one of Jay's daughters who was at the time hurt so badly they thought she'd never walk again, showing the two girls looking healthy and happy and walking, and just that whole, even Papa Briscoe at ringside, just the whole thing gave you the feels. And if it didn't, there's something wrong with you. That is definitely just an inspiring story for those two young women, and to see a family that close, even in the face of tragedy, keeping their brother's legacy alive was just beautiful. Honestly,
absolutely
beautiful thing. And then my match of the week, Doug, you named the match of the week. That was the match of the week. So I'm going to go a completely different thing. I'm going to go the Pretty Deadly match on SmackDown. And why? Not because it was the best match. It wasn't even in the top 5 best matches. I'm only doing it because I've already picked Mark Briscoe as my performer of the week. And so I can't really do another performance of the week. But I have to mention this in this roundabout way to say Pretty Deadly took on Tyler Bate and not Butch, but Pete freaking Dunne. I have to say that seeing Pete Dunne be Pete Dunne and not Butch, which was one of the worst gimmicks that we have hated from the inception of the Butch gimmick, to see him return back to the moniker Pete Dunne deserves some sort of call out. I couldn't figure out another place to put it other than up in what I wanted to say about the Briscoes in the real life. So that's my match of the week, because we saw Pete Dunne.
So I love the foreshadowing that they did. Like, was it the week before that he and Tyler Bate are in like some club or coffee house or something, and it's like, oh, please tell me this means Pete Dunne is forthcoming. We're getting it. We're getting it. Let him be Pete Dunne again.
And I even like the ridiculous after match comedic heel promo from Pretty Deadly, where they attributed their loss for preparing for Butch and not for Pete Dunne, which is fantastic all the way around. So however they got there, We have Pete Dunne back. All is right with the world, because, hey, Doug, we are on the road to WrestleMania.
Indeed we are. We are indeed.
With that, next week, as you can see, we are going to finish our trifecta of Rumble programming. This is 2 of 3 of our Rumble focus matches, or Rumble focus. Yeah, Doug, you and I are going to Rumble. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. No.
Okay.
We're going to finish strong next week with talking about the Rumble itself, giving you everything that there is to know about what we liked, what we didn't like, how right or wrong we were. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win and what surprises you're anticipating. And join us next week when we all get to talk about what happened at Royal Rumble. Hopefully we have 2 great Rumbles to kick off an eventful Mania season.
Absolutely. Can't wait. It is WrestleMania season officially next week. It starts. I'm ready for it. And we'll be finishing our WrestleMania story for 2024, or not our WrestleMania story, our Royal Rumble story,
That's right.
and starting our WrestleMania road. I'm already for WrestleMania. All right, I'm going to ramble some more. Kevin, just kill the feed. Good night, everybody.
I'm gonna say good night and see you next week, folks. Sunday at 8.
Go watch some wrestling.